It's just like playing the game. If someone never touched a GameCube controller in between their tournaments and then they were like, oh man, I expected to get better. It's like, no, you didn't. Maybe you thought you were going to, but like you didn't put in the work to get better. I think at a very general level, as long as we're just talking about like getting into commentary, like locals are the best spot for it. Right now, it is pretty easy to find spots at random Netplay events. Even if no one watches the Netplay event, if you have something to put on your resume, that I am more likely to take someone with like a bunch of tournaments that I've never heard of, but I will still take someone who has commentary on their resume that I just don't know than someone who's like, this is the first time I've tried commentary. When events, especially locals, allow anyone on the mic, how can you help grow that part of your community's content without fear of turning players away from the mic, or do you? The reason I ask is because people become notorious for bad or good commentary, and it feels bad to say no to some people on the mic while trying to be inclusive. I think this question is really interesting because I've struggled with that myself. Because for most of you know, my background is in tournament organizing, and then I got into commentary. It depends on the level of notoriety of your locals, if that makes sense. If you have a local that gets like 10 viewers, it is only players in your city, I think you can be a lot more willing to let random people try out on the mic. If your local is like Xanadu, a very large local, I think you need to be a little bit more strict because more people nationwide will be seeing it. I think a lot of cities that have multiple locals, there's always some locals that feel more of like, this is the one that like everyone kind of goons and their homies, and like this is the one that people play more seriously in. 2 different tournaments. And I think one of the biggest things about commentary is knowing the vibe that you're trying to get across. Even in nationals, there's a huge difference in commentating something like Riptide SNS or even Bigger Balk versus like Evo or Genesis. Even if they're both majors, they have extremely different feels. But the same thing goes for locals. There's a difference between a local that gets like 50 entrants every week and is really, really competitive versus like this is the bar local and people chill and hang out and drink while they're playing. And so I think if you are the TO trying to figure out who you let on the mic, you have to factor that in. And that is your job as the TO to let your commentators know what the vibe is, what you're aiming for. I'm always of the opinion that locals are your chance to try out being on the mic. I do have a few rules. I need to know who the person is. I don't let just anybody on because I've seen too many rough sets of commentary, not from ones that I did, but from like watching streams where like someone gets on and they let slip while they're on the mic like, hey, it's my first tournament, super excited to be here. And it's great. And I love that people are at their first tournament and trying to see where they fit in. You do not fit in on the mic. You just don't. Me, like 6 years ago, would have really been upset at that statement too, which is very interesting. Before I even went to a tournament, I wanted to try commentary. I was that kid. You need to know more about the game. That's it. You need to know more about the game before you can do commentary. You do not need to be a top player. You don't need to be PR'd, but you need to know more about it. There's different things people can focus on commentary, whether that's learning storylines of their local scene, who's grinding, who's practicing, who is upcoming, who's made big upsets, who's kind of fallen off, like all that stuff. And you also have the people that are like great at analysis. And if you are brand new to the scene, you've been playing for like 2 months, you won't know either of this. I'm okay with letting people on as long as I know them and giving them a shot. Or like someone else that I trust has vouched for them, that kind of thing. I don't need to like be great friends with them, but just like know them. Locals are your chance to get that. If someone does a bad job, like objectively bad, then you talk to them. You say like, hey, like this is why if you're willing to work on this, this, and this, definitely want to have you back on. Unless it is like something offensive. But if it's just like, hey, like it's really rough, you seemed really anxious and you really needed to, like you were way too nervous, like give them advice, give them concrete things to work for when you take them off the mic between sets. That's the other thing. I almost never take someone, unless it is, again, something offensive. I never take people off the mic in the middle of a game. It is always between sets. I don't think it's necessary to say no to a lot of people. And if you do say no, there's almost always a like legitimate reason that won't make them feel bad. And that reason could be, I just want you to have a little bit more experience in game or in the community before hopping on the mic. Or that could be, hey, last time you were on, we talked about this, this, and this, and I want you to like practice that. But there's a lot of communities where there's no one that's actually like practicing. It's just like playing the game. If someone never touched a GameCube controller in between their tournaments and then they were like, oh man, I expected to get better. It's like, no, you didn't. Maybe you thought you were going to, but like you didn't put in the work to get better. When I TO'd in Ohio, we had a guy that didn't compete and solely wanted to be a commentator. The community really did not like his commentary and would often greet it with, oh no, he was on the mic for my set. It wasn't offensive, it was just bad. Okay. So we had the struggle of making them feel like they belonged while also giving them a chance to grow. I think in a case like that, you just have to be like really honest with somebody. And this is hard. Like I totally would feel uncomfortable in that. Were you able to give them feedback? There's a big difference in like, hey, people don't like your commentary. And hey, you're using the same phrase like 8 times a set. We would give them feedback and be honest in a nice way. It just never got better. I mean, I think at that point you do have to say like being on the mic is a privilege. Being on the mic, unfortunately, isn't a right. It's not something that everyone gets to do. It is a privilege. It is something that you kind of have to prove yourself a little bit. I think you were good to give them a chance, and I appreciate that you said, here's some feedback, let's work on this, and then they came back. And like, if they work on it, great. If they don't, that's different. On a national level, we can even look at that. Obviously, they weren't bad, is Fendrick. A lot of people really, really didn't like his commentary when he was coming up. And you know what he did? He took feedback and worked and really improved. A lot of the people that didn't like him at first gave him, like 2 years later, were like, yeah, he's fine now, or he's good now, or like whatever. I think he's good. Again, like it depends on commentary style. I know that anytime like Fendi or Stewed or a few other people are on the mic, there will be people in chat that don't like it because they have a much more relaxed or a much more esports or a much more whatever. I'm a huge fan of Stewed. Huge Stewed fan. I'm very glad that he's gotten some cool opportunities. But like he keeps things low key and he keeps things calm, and like if he gets excited, you know that something's happening. But he's really good at explaining what's going on. And some people don't like that. They want everything to be hype, or they want you to be making a lot of jokes, or they want you to do whatever. And so like sometimes it's just not your style, and it's okay. Not everyone needs to do commentary for everyone, if that makes sense. That's something I pride myself on, actually, is not that I can just like flow through those styles, but like I have done commentary at Genesis. And I've done commentary at SNS, and they are very, very different vibes. And as long as I feel comfortable with like, this is the kind of tournament this is, I can be more analytical or I can be jokey. And and a lot of people can swing between those. I think for some people it's a crutch that they lay on. Yes, exactly. Like, I only make jokes, and if you don't like it, I'm just not your commentator. It's like, okay. I see it more on a regional level, actually. On a regional level, I see people that are just like, this is my kind of commentary. And then they can't figure out why they're not getting asked to do bigger tournaments. Or why some tournaments are like, oh, we love this guy, we're going to have him on for top 8. And then there's other tournaments that are like, you're not getting a spot for pools. Because you are known as only the person who does this. You are the person who yells a lot, or you are the person who gets hype about everything, even when it's not that big of a deal. Or you're the person who like chills and sits back and like, I'm gonna tell you why this person didn't make the right decision all the time. I think at a regional level, people get caught into like, this is my style. And again, that comes down to the not analyzing. I know a lot of people that they'll analyze their Smash sets. They will study their VODs, and then if you ask them to do that for commentary, they'd be like, that's super weird. It is weird. It is really weird to listen to yourself talk. But there's times where I've been like, oh, I didn't know I had that vocal crutch of I use the same phrase every time something happens, or I need to enunciate more, or I need to do whatever. Like, that's really important to watch your own VODs, especially on the mic. trying to mimic top esports commentators a bad habit or useful for your own development? It depends on what you mean. Again, I think it comes down to knowing how to work within the style of the tournament you're at. If you're at like an 18 plus bar local and you are trying to mimic like League of Legends commentary, then no, unless you're doing it as a bit and people can tell you're joking and you stop after like 5 minutes. If you're just like, hey, I like that this guy gets hype, yeah, that's fine. I try to take things from other commentators. I think even at a higher level, people do that. I watch commentators from other esports actually, and I think watching people from other esports and other things in general is a huge way to improve on your commentary. I get really sad when Smash players don't know who Sajam is, for example. Yeah, no, I know you mean stealing someone's style. I will try to take things that people do and like put them into my own stuff. I think if I listen to you and I'm just like, oh, you're trying to be homemade waffles, that's a little harsh. I think everyone has to start somewhere though. It's the same thing with playing. A lot of low level players they'll be like, I'm trying to play like Ginger, or I'm trying to play like Mango, or I'm trying to play like Wobbles, or I'm trying to do whatever. And then people will eventually grow into the like, oh, this fits my playstyle more, or like, I'm not good at this and I need to practice this more. And I think that's the issue with commentary is that people will steal a style and just stay there. And all they ever are is knockoff EE or knockoff TK or knockoff Vish or whatever. Actually, I don't know anybody who's tried Vish, which is weird because I think his commentary is really good. But like, people that do that. And if you stay there, that's bad. But if you progress and you use that as a like, I like this commentary, and so that's what I'm gonna like try to emulate for a bit, that's fine. Don't try to steal someone's accent. Oh my god, please don't do that. I've heard it. It's not good. It's not on purpose. They will take the way someone says something. It's not just the like, oh, he gets hype. It's, oh, he says this phrase in this cadence, and I'm doing that now. Don't do that. That sucks. Please don't do that. That's really annoying. Making a reference is fine. This is something, remind me to bring this up. References are okay because they give your audience a grounding, and it's like, oh yeah, like this is a thing. Smash players and Smash commentators take it way too far. Not everything is a reference. Not everything has to be a reference. We will talk about that later though. I get that you're trying to like learn where you're at, but if you don't progress past that, you are going to cap yourself at a level. If the person you are copying, and I'm not saying like you're taking elements of them, but if the person you're copying has this as their peak, you are going to have like this as your peak, because you can never do them better than they can. And so you have to like add in your own stuff and grow. And I see that within streaming as well. I am very interested to see what the first year of in-person events looks like again on the mic. Whether that's 2021 or 2022, or like if that starts in like the end of 2021, whatever. I'm very interested to see where we end up a year in. Because there's a lot of spots now that have opened up. It has been said for a long time that in Melee or even in Ult that it is hard to break into top level commentary because the people that do top level commentary have already all been decided, which I think is not quite true, but it is hard. There's definitely a wall there where it's like, oh, I have to push way harder to get from regionals to nationals or like whatever, or from pools to like a notable spot. If you have, say, 16 spots at a tournament or at a national for commentary, and now 4 of those spots that would have been taken by a few different names are open, we're going to see new people filtering in, and I am actually very excited to see that. Both because I have some favorite commentators, like I mentioned, Stude. I really want to see Stude pop off because there's going to be more open spots. But I'm really excited to see commentators that I didn't know that were like, they were known in their region, but not nationally. Shoot, I hope that I'm one of those people. I hope that I can prove myself in that kind of spot. Whereas like I've done that in P+ and in Rivals, but I haven't been able to in Melee. Let's talk about, unless people have other stuff, we can keep it going. I want to talk about references and memes and stuff like that on commentary, because it sucks. References and memes are fine. Overusing references and memes gets so bad so fast. I think people need to realize that that kind of thing is okay every once in a while, because it really does help you build a rapport. Memes and references help you like connect with a viewer. The problem is when that becomes what your commentary is. Whether that's a meme or a reference or like a catchphrase or whatever. If someone says on the mic, oh, yo, that's like, they make a reference or a joke, or they're like, this is like the time that XYZ happened in, I've heard it about like the NBA finals or a hip hop bar or an anime or a TV show, like that's fine. Cool. I think like Homemade Waffles usually does a good job with this. He'll often make like a reference to a hip hop thing and then just move on. But the number of times, and I'm just going to call it out because this is how I see it, as someone who does not watch anime, I think I notice it more. The amount of times that I will suddenly hear the conversation shift from like the cool thing that just happened to be like, this is like that arc of this anime. And it's never a joke about it. They're just like, this game of Smash is definitely like this anime, and then they talk about anime for the next minute and 30 seconds. And the average Smash set is about 3 minutes or less. And I'm not joking. Like, I've heard this. People are better about it at like nationals, but it still happens every once in a while. And I'm just like, if anybody in the chat doesn't watch anime, they now don't know what you're talking about for like 2 minutes. 2 straight minutes of just like, okay, versus like a throwaway line that's like a reference to a bar, or like you copied the line of a song, or you did whatever. Like, if someone doesn't get that, they can keep moving on. And like, okay, they missed a 5-second thing. But for some reason, some people get hung up on the references and they're just like, now we need to talk about, yeah, ping pong or haiku or like, My Hero. I don't know why I know the names of a lot of anime when I've watched 1.5 ever, but like, yeah, you just don't want to dwell on it. And I get that, like, we're in a nerd culture. We just are. And so you are more likely to be able to talk about nerdy things. Like, I have commented while doing Rivals commentary or while doing Melee commentary about like a different game's esports scene. And I'll be like, oh, it's similar to this thing. And then I'll move on. You have to move on. And for some reason, it's anime and memes that everyone's like, oh, I better do a callback now. It's like, no, it was 30 seconds ago. You do not need to do a callback to that meme yet. We can move on for a little bit. It's like the time that this person did this thing in this show. And then they'll like talk for 30 minutes about not 30 minutes, but like half the set about where everybody fits in that show. And just like, you know what? That actually could be good, like, YouTube content. I wouldn't watch it. I would not watch it at all. If you made a list of, like, all of the Dragon Ball characters matched up with your favorite PM people, like, some people would watch that. It's just not for me. Some people would watch the entire thing, though. Don't do that while you're on the mic. If you're making a reference, you gotta keep moving. You gotta keep talking about the game. If you're not in on a joke, you don't like it. Recognize that your audience is broad on topics and references. Yeah, for sure. And I get that some people like only know this thing or only know that thing. Like their hobbies are Smash and music. And if you get a reference or a joke, it's gonna be about one of those two. Or their hobbies are Smash and anime, or Smash and I'm blanking, as my hobby's music and everyone else's is anime. I think it's fine, depending on what is going on and the context of your local, it is fine to spend the set kind of talking about the game. But if you lay out like, it's really interesting that this is happening because these two players were training partners but now haven't played in 6 months, and one of them's been really working on XYZ matchup, and you talk about all of that, but you're not doing like analysis, that's fine. Just know like when to move on. And that's a thing for like a lot of commentary in general, is that people don't know when to just keep going. There are times where I had like a really cool point that I wanted to make about like a pattern that I was getting out of the match. Like, oh, this person keeps going for this option in this situation, and I will start explaining it. And then something really crazy happens and you just have to be like, let's talk about that really crazy thing that just happened. And I know that there's a lot of times where someone will be like, I want to make my point about this read that I have that's been happening. And if you have time, definitely go for it. And I really enjoy pointing out that kind of thing. I love when I'm able to point out, like, he's going for this ledge option. Let's see if it keeps working or if eventually Zane starts covering it. In fact, I feel really, because there's times where I've been able to, like, 2 minutes later be like, look, that was that thing I pointed out, and now you're seeing the repercussions of the fact that he went for it, like, a majority of the time. Yes, narrative shouldn't override the action. Again, depends on the level of commentary. Top 8s for sure. You should just talk about what's happening. Narrative is important, though, because you want to build up the reason why someone should care about the set that's happening. You really should talk about, like, why should someone care about what's going on the screen? And I think that's really undervalued. And that's something that I really try to provide any time I'm on commentary, whether it's a small charity event or if it's a big national. But if I'm trying to point something out and then someone does the sickest combo I've ever seen, yes, we're going to talk about how crazy that combo was. And then maybe I can get back to what I was saying. But you have to be ready to just keep moving. Balancing entertainment and expectations of players to get analysis and advice and stuff. Yeah, it's really tough. I don't expect someone who gets on stream very early at a major to get, like, a lot of good advice. I think that's also something that more of a local could do. I think the bigger the tournament is and the more people, the more you're just trying to entertain the folks that are watching at home. But I do think you can entertain while also putting into context, like, this is... At least entertain them about the tournament that's happening currently and not, like, the tournament that happened, like, a year or two ago. You can talk about storylines that are going into the tournament that you're actively at. And not just, like, let's talk about this tournament from 4 years ago again. Do not underestimate the importance of making a reel. I read a tweet before. Basically, they were like, I need someone else to make a commentary thing for me. Because if I make my own commentary thing, that means I'm try hard. It's cringe to make your own commentary highlights. And that's a really bad way to look at it. Because if you don't have a reel, you will not be hired at events. Just straight up. Having a reel is really important. And it doesn't need to be super fancy. Like, I'm not the person to ask about, like, what you should include in a reel, because I don't know. I'm still working on that myself. I know that you want your reel to include, like, good examples of your style of commentary. Obviously, if you've done big tournaments, that someone will, like, even recognize the overlay and be like, oh my gosh, you commentated Genesis. Like, that's a big deal. But even if it's all locals, include stuff that's like, here's some analytical spots. Here's some spots where I'm riffing with my co-commentator. I know some people who are looking to get, like, high-end spots will include things like a good ad read. Like, you want if you are doing, or like they'll include a good segue to, like, advertisements. Like, it depends on what you're trying to do. Being able to prove, like, this is what I'm good at is really important. Like, you can definitely get, like, regional, or even if you're homies with the right people, you can get, like, some bigger slots without it. But if you are trying to break into commentary, you need to have a reel once you have the experience under your belt. But having a reel at all, I've straight up been told that the reason I got a slot above certain other people was because I had a reel and they knew that I was taking things seriously and put the effort in. Even if the effort was to hire someone to make a reel for me. It doesn't need to be like a super fancy one, it just needs to exist. Yeah, I don't like the caring about what you're doing on the mic is cringe kind of thing. Because often those are also people that want to be on the mic. But they want to be on the mic as long as they can, like, shitpost and talk, like, just talk with their friends. And in my opinion is that if you're doing that, unless it is, again, a local or a bar tournament, if you're doing that, then why aren't you just in the crowd doing that with your friends? And in my mind, I read that as caring about this is cringe, because guess what? You're never gonna commentate a national. If that's your goal, if your goal is to commentate a national, you're never going to do it if you don't care about what you're doing. And if you don't put in the effort, and if you don't, yeah, exactly, it's a resume. If I listen to my set back later, though, and I'm just like, oh, they were just talking about why, like, Nana and Popo are definitely jazz musicians for 10 minutes. Okay. Why? Why did we do this?